Picture yourself standing at the edge of a long stretch of highway, the horizon shimmering with heat and the sound of engines faint in the distance. You can almost feel the anticipation, the weight of mechanical history pressing forward, carrying stories of reinvention, resilience, and the pursuit of identity. This isn't just about machinery. It's about the heartbeat of an era, the spark of engineering that found its way into unexpected corners of the world. Imagine the clash of tradition and modernity, the tension between originality and imitation, and the way riders, collectors, and dreamers saw themselves reflected in the iron and chrome. The stakes aren't small. They shape how we think about authenticity, ownership, and the idea of legacy in motion. By the end of this story, you'll see how one design became more than an engine. It became a cultural crossroads. If you're ready for the ride, make sure to like, subscribe, and drop a comment telling us which machine you want us to explore next. The Harley Evo engine, 1984-1999, arrived at a turning point in motorcycle history, and its presence was impossible to ignore. For enthusiasts at the time, the introduction of this V-twin wasn't just another chapter in mechanical design. It was a rescue mission for an entire brand identity. At its core, the Evo promised something riders had been demanding for years: reliability without losing the visceral thump and character that defined their machines. What made the Harley Evo engine, 1984-1999, so compelling wasn't just how it performed on the road, but what it symbolized about survival, reinvention, and the way one company's future could hinge on a single design. This engine carried both heritage and risk, a delicate balance that would ripple out far beyond the US market, especially when the design crossed borders and found itself reborn in unexpected ways. Microstory: the waiting years. Before the Evo was unveiled, many loyal riders were restless. Earlier engines were iconic but plagued with issues, and those who stuck around felt like they were living on borrowed time. For a company built on pride and community, frustration was corrosive. The unveiling of the new V-twin wasn't simply about horsepower or displacement. It was a desperate attempt to rebuild trust. When the Harley Evo engine, 1984-1999, finally arrived, it was like a collective sigh of relief rolling across dealerships. Riders lined up not just to buy motorcycles, but to buy hope. Context Digest: what Evo really meant. The nickname was short for evolution, and that word alone mattered. It represented a break from the uncertainty of the past. Instead of discarding heritage, the engine refined it, smoothing out weaknesses while keeping the essence intact. For engineers, it was the chance to prove that classic design could meet modern standards. For riders, it was reassurance that the bikes they loved wouldn't vanish into obsolescence. The Harley Evo engine, 1984-1999, wasn't a radical reinvention. It was a careful recalibration of identity. Microstory: the first long ride. Picture an owner rolling out of a dealership in 1985, gripping the bars with a mix of skepticism and excitement. The first long ride was a revelation. Where older motors had coughed and stumbled, the Evo purred with confidence mile after mile. It wasn't perfect, but it felt trustworthy in a way its predecessors rarely had. That feeling built loyalty faster than marketing ever could. The Harley Evo engine, 1984-1999, proved itself not in glossy brochures, but in the quiet satisfaction of 1,000 road trips that ended without breakdowns. Context Digest: why reliability mattered. Reliability wasn't just a technical checkbox, it was the difference between revival and collapse. For a company battling both competition and reputation, every warranty claim hurt. Riders had long endured the joke that owning one of these bikes meant carrying a toolkit everywhere. The Evo's durability silenced those barbs. The Harley Evo engine, 1984-1999, became the cornerstone of rebuilding credibility. Proof that the company could deliver modern dependability without losing the rough charm of its lineage. Microstory: the export shock. Once the Evo proved itself in the US, its influence didn't stay contained. Dealers in other countries began to notice its impact, and riders overseas found themselves drawn to the mystique. Import numbers rose, but with popularity came imitation. Factories abroad studied the design closely, and soon whispers of clones began circulating. For fans, this was both flattering and threatening. Flattering because the engine had global appeal, threatening because imitation risked diluting the legend. The Harley Evo engine, 1984-1999, wasn't just an American story anymore. It was becoming a global one. Context Digest, setting the stage for clones. Industrial growth in other countries meant access to reverse engineering techniques was easier than ever. A strong design could be studied, replicated, and repurposed for local markets hungry for affordable alternatives. The Evo, with its balance of heritage look and dependable performance, was an obvious target. Once imitation engines started showing up, they carried with them a complicated legacy. Were they tributes or theft? The Harley Evo engine, 1984-1999, sat at the center of this debate, its blueprints copied, altered, and reborn under different badges. Reflection Bridge. A design that started as salvation was now crossing borders into territory its creators never imagined. The Harley Evo engine, 1984 to 1999, had proven it could save a company at home. But the next chapter would test what happened when its DNA was transplanted overseas. The Harley Evo engine, 1984-1999, didn't just define a generation of American motorcycles. It became a blueprint that traveled far beyond its birthplace. As industrial growth surged in Asia, the Evo's design caught the attention of manufacturers who saw in it not just engineering, but opportunity. The distinctive lines, the rhythmic cadence, and the reputation for reliability were all there for the taking, provided someone was bold enough to replicate it. The Harley Evo engine, 1984-1999, suddenly faced an afterlife its creators never predicted. One where its identity was copied, modified, and sold under entirely different circumstances. Microstory. The factory floor in China. Imagine a facility where workers huddle around an imported engine, tools in hand, documenting every bolt, curve, and chamber. In these moments, the Evo wasn't revered as a cultural icon, but dissected as a puzzle to be solved. Each component was mapped, measured, and reimagined for mass production at a fraction of the cost. Within a few years, machines carrying these clones rolled out onto local streets, offering a sound and feel that mimicked the original. The Harley Evo engine, 1984-1999, had been reborn, but now in a form accessible to riders who could never afford the real thing. Context Digest. Why cloning happened. For emerging markets, authenticity was often out of reach. Genuine imports were expensive, rare, and restricted by tariffs. Local manufacturers saw cloning as both a business opportunity and a patriotic duty to feed domestic demand. From their perspective, duplicating a proven design wasn't theft, it was adaptation. The Harley Evo engine, 1984-1999, was caught in the middle of this global tension. Seen by some as sacred heritage and by others as fair game in the race to industrialize. Microstory. Riders on a budget. Picture a young rider in a small Chinese city standing beside his first cruiser. The bike looked and sounded close enough to the real thing to fuel pride and excitement. For him, it wasn't about owning history. It was about experiencing freedom on two wheels. These clones delivered that dream, even if critics scoffed at their legitimacy. The Harley Evo engine, 1984-1999, unknowingly gave rise to a new culture, one where access mattered more than authenticity. Context Digest. The IP dilemma. Intellectual property battles loomed large as these engines spread. Official complaints were filed, but enforcing them across borders proved difficult and often fruitless. Companies debated whether pursuing legal action was worth the cost, especially when knockoffs served markets they couldn't or wouldn't reach. In this murky landscape, the Harley Evo engine, 1984-1999, became both victim and catalyst, highlighting how porous design ownership could be in a globalized world. Microstory. The enthusiast divide. Among riders, opinions split sharply. Some dismissed the clones as cheap imitations that cheapened the legacy. Others admired the audacity, seeing them as a form of tribute that expanded access to a classic experience. Online forums lit up with debates, and friendships were tested over whether these engines deserved respect or ridicule. The Harley Evo engine, 1984-1999, had become more than metal. It was now a lightning rod for cultural arguments about originality, pride, and inclusion. Context Digest. Global ripples. The presence of these clones forced larger questions. If an engine could be replicated so successfully, what did that mean for other iconic designs? Was heritage secure, or was it always at risk of dilution? For enthusiasts in the US, it was a sobering reminder that no matter how strongly a machine symbolized homegrown pride, its identity could slip through borders and reappear in unexpected forms. The Harley Evo engine, 1984-1999, was living proof of that uneasy reality. Reflection Bridge, what began as a revival in America had turned into a cultural export, reshaped and contested thousands of miles away. The Harley Evo engine, 1984-1999, may have been cloned and debated, but the deeper story lies in what those copies meant for its legacy and the riders who embraced them. The Harley Evo engine, 1984-1999, carried a legacy that no one could have foreseen when it first rolled out. By the time its clones were circulating overseas, it was clear this wasn't simply an engineering story. It was a cultural one. Riders who embraced the original cherished its authenticity, while those who adopted the copies found their own version of freedom. The Harley Evo engine, 1984-1999, stood at the crossroads of authenticity and accessibility, and its impact would ripple across borders long after the last one was built. Microstory: the Loyalist's view. For riders who had lived through the rougher years before the Evo, loyalty was absolute. They viewed the engine as the savior of the machines they loved, a symbol of pride forged in steel. Watching clones emerge overseas felt like a betrayal. To them, owning anything but the original was empty, no matter how similar it sounded. The Harley Evo engine, 1984-1999, represented blood, sweat, and decades of loyalty, something they believed could never be copied. Context Digest: clones as gateways. Yet for thousands of others, those same clones were the only gateway into the lifestyle. They made the dream of riding a thumping V-twin affordable, approachable, and real. Riders didn't see themselves as imposters. They saw themselves as participants in a culture they admired. For them, the Harley Evo engine, 1984-1999, was less about provenance and more about shared experience, even if their version came from a local factory. Microstory: a weekend meetup. Imagine a gathering of riders in Southeast Asia, some astride imported originals, others on locally built clones. The differences are visible, but the laughter, the shared roads, and the love for two wheels blur the lines. Nobody cares who has the authentic machine after the engine's cool. The Harley Evo engine, 1984-1999, whether genuine or cloned, is the invisible thread connecting these people, sparking friendships and forging communities that might never have existed otherwise. Context Digest: what legacy really means. In the end, legacy is not just about patents or factory stamps. It's about the ideas and emotions an engine creates. The Evo's clones may never hold collectible value, but they've extended its reach in ways the original company never could. The Harley Evo engine, 1984-1999, proves that influence often escapes ownership, spreading wherever passion carries it. Microstory: the collector's dilemma. In the US, collectors debate what role the Evo should play in the pantheon of great engines. Its reliability saved a brand, its style inspired devotion, and its clones raised difficult questions. Some cherish it as the last purely mechanical symbol before modern tech reshaped motorcycles. Others wonder if the flood of imitations abroad will dilute its value over time. The Harley Evo engine, 1984-1999, still commands respect, but its story forces every collector to grapple with how heritage is defined. Context Digest: a cultural crossroads. More than most engines, the Evo's tale demonstrates how technology, identity, and culture intertwine. It saved an American icon, became a blueprint for global expansion, and sparked debates about authenticity that still resonate. Its presence in garages and streets worldwide shows how mechanical design can escape borders, reshaping communities and challenging old definitions of originality. The Harley Evo engine, 1984-1999, doesn't belong to one nation anymore. It belongs to anyone who has felt its rhythm beneath them. Reflection Bridge. And that's the paradox. A machine built to preserve tradition ended up redefining it worldwide. The Harley Evo engine, 1984-1999, closed its production run as a legend, but its afterlife through clones and culture continues to shape how riders think about freedom, heritage, and the machines they call their own. The Harley Evo engine, 1984-1999, remains one of the most fascinating chapters in motorcycling because it was never just about engineering. It was about survival, reinvention, and legacy. From the moment it appeared, the Evo redefined what riders could expect from a V-twin: reliability without sacrificing character. The Harley Evo engine, 1984-1999, quickly became more than machinery. It became a symbol of renewed trust, an engine that carried a struggling identity back into relevance and onto roads across America. Its story could have ended there, as a domestic victory. But the unexpected rise of overseas clones extended its influence into places its makers never dreamed possible. In the United States, the Evo restored faith. Riders who had once joked about carrying toolkits everywhere finally had proof that their machines could deliver dependability without losing soul. For many, the engine embodied the perfect balance between heritage and progress. At the same time, it showed how much was at stake. When an entire company leans on a single design to carry its reputation, success or failure isn't just mechanical, it's existential. The Harley Evo engine, 1984-1999, succeeded brilliantly, and that success invited imitation. Abroad, the clones reframed the conversation. Some riders embraced them as affordable pathways into a dream, while others dismissed them as hollow echoes of the original. In markets where genuine imports were rare or unreachable, those copies created local cultures that might never have existed otherwise. The Harley Evo engine, 1984-1999, thus became a paradox. Fiercely defended as sacred heritage in some places, casually borrowed and reimagined in others. Instead of weakening its legend, though, the clones spread its sound, style, and essence to thousands of riders who otherwise would have only admired from a distance. For US viewers, the takeaway is layered. On one hand, owning a genuine Evo-powered bike is about preserving a piece of history, a tangible link to the moment when resilience and design intersected. On the other, recognizing the reach of its clones shows how cultural icons rarely remain confined. Heritage is porous, and the Harley Evo engine, 1984-1999, illustrates how a design meant to preserve tradition ended up democratizing it far beyond its borders. Whether you view that as dilution or expansion depends on how you define authenticity. The final legacy is this: the Evo proved that mechanical design can be more than function. It can be identity, pride, and a cultural export all at once. It saved a company, inspired loyalty, provoked imitation, and sparked debates that continue today. The Harley Evo engine, 1984-1999, may have stopped rolling off the line decades ago, but its story still resonates wherever riders gather, reminding us that once a machine captures the human imagination, its journey never truly ends.